Welcome to the OddsBreakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 48 of 2021. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The OddsBreakers and follow us on social media / The OddsBreakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code TheOddsBreakers. Terms, conditions, location apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs, sponsor the website and the podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit TheOddsBreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my premium place before the line moves. Check out our other handicappers there as well. And if nothing else, please visit TheOddsBreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. We have a great show for you today because we are loaded with great guests. Vegas Matty is going to come on to discuss some of the football contests this year available to everybody in Las Vegas. Can't wait to talk to Matty. Then we're going to have Adam Burke from ATS.io coming on to discuss his college football rankings, ratings, season win totals. Going to try to touch on every single division today with Adam. And then finally, Mr. Ross Tucker from Even Money in the Ross Tucker family of podcasts is coming on to break down some NFL season win totals with me. Very excited for all that. And then at the end, I'm going to try to give you a UFC play. UFC on ESPN 28 for your weekend viewing pleasure. My friends, we have a long podcast today, so we're going to get right into it with Vegas Matty from footballcontest.com. And now I'm very excited to welcome the most experienced proxy in all of Las Vegas from footballcontest.com, Mr. Vegas Matty. You can follow him on Twitter at Vegas_Matty. Matty, welcome to the show, my man. How's the summer winding down for you?
Well, actually, it's going quite well. It's winding up as we speak. Things are getting very busy for us. My partner, Tony, and I are signing up people every day at the various sports books in Vegas for the biggest football contests in the country. And, this is our busy time, basically from August through September 11th, I believe, is the final sign-up day. It's going to be probably 90% of the entries in the contest are going to be coming in. So they're starting to really ramp up, and we're ramping up with it.
Oh, I bet, man. And obviously the Twitter handle for the business is at Football Contest.
You got it.
Yeah, make sure you guys follow him. He's the most experienced guy out there if you want to get in these contests. These contests are becoming huge. More and more sports books are offering them, and the pot keeps growing. So you guys got to check this out. And we're going to talk about the contest and try to educate you guys a little bit on it in case you haven't heard some of these points. Some of it might be redundant from you from other shows, but let's get right into that. Can you tell our listeners, Matty, a little bit about Football Contest, what you do there, and how you got started?
Sure. Well, footballcontest.com we developed as a main hub for everyone to find out about the biggest Las Vegas football contests, which require a proxy to be able to submit your picks for if you're unable to do so in person. So a lot of people, I still get people like the last few days come in and sign up, and they say, hey, I would have done this years ago if I would have known that I could use a proxy to sign up. That's a very common thing that they'll tell you. And what we try to do is educate everyone who's interested in these contests, give them all the information they need so they can plan their trip to Vegas, get out here, sign up, use us as their proxy. We've been doing this a long time. My partner, Tony, and I first started proxying for people back in 2005. So we're going on like 16 years now where we've been doing this for people. And we formed a business. We joined forces, kind of teamed up together because we were doing this separately for a few years. But as we saw the market kind of pick up for football contests. It was a super contest back in the day. That was the really the granddaddy of them all. And now you see like Circa came into the mix last couple years ago, and they've really kind of taken over that kind of space as the premier football contest. But we saw a need for like people to find out about the contests, and then also be able to trust somebody in Vegas, not just some guy on the corner trying to take your money and saying, "Oh, I'll put your picks in for you, buddy." That kind of thing. We wanted it to be where, somebody calls us, we're very responsive. They email us. We try to get back to you within a few minutes, just to set up that relationship right from the start, answer any questions you have, let you know exactly what we're all about, how we submit the picks, let them know that there's two of us as well, that we kind of work extremely well together, and just everything that we do, from going into the sports book, submitting the picks, double checking everything before we leave. We have a very thorough process that we do, and that's really, I think, what's made us the top proxy service.
Oh, that's awesome. And wow, since 2005, that is a long time, man. And what's funny about what you said, some guy off the street, to be honest with you, I would trust your company over my buddy in Vegas to put in my picks, because
of course,
my buddy's got an excuse to be like, dude, sorry, man, but like when you hire someone to do it and you pay it for it, there's a lot more accountability. So even thinking like that makes more sense for people to go the professional route. So just thought of that. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes your buddy might oversleep. He might just not want to go to the book that day or whatever. And I mean, it's your investment. I mean, you're paying $1,000 an entry to sign up for a football contest. If you don't get your picks in, you take a significant hit. You can go 0-5 in a week in like the Circa Million or the Super Contest, or you don't get your pick in for the Survivor, the Circa Survivor, you're done. So, I mean, that's something definitely to keep in mind. And we have people all the time, and even guys who send their friends to sign up for them as well, if they can't get out to Vegas. And that's something I wanted to bring up too, is just that, it's a challenge to get to Vegas right now. Obviously, I know everything with COVID the last summer and then this summer. And, a lot of people will try to find a way to get in anyway. And if you have a family member or a friend that's going to Vegas, you want to give them a little cut if you end up winning some money. It's a good way to still get in to these contests, is at least have somebody be able to sign up on your behalf and then work with us to get the picks in.
Yeah, there you go. If you do know someone, they can at least, hopefully you can trust them to sign up for you. Then Matty can take care of the rest.
They don't blow the money at the tables on the way to the sports book, which has happened as well.
I'm sure there's plenty of stories.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of stories for people doing crazy stuff, losing their entry money and whatnot, and having to cancel their appointment to meet up with us because they had a rough night, that kind of thing. I mean, it happens. It's, Vegas, what happens in Vegas, how that goes. So, but we want, we actually promote people coming to Vegas and signing up for the contest as soon as possible, so they knock it out so they can enjoy the rest of their weekend. Fridays are really some of our busiest days because, people come into town and they have a lot of plans for the weekend, and you just want to go straight to the sports book, have that money set aside for the contest. And it's cool too, because you can use a credit card to pay for these too. So it's a small fee, 3% fee, but at the same time, if you put it on a card, it's taken care of. You can have the cash that you have to spend on everything else you're doing in Vegas.
That's right. That's right, man. That's fascinating. Get that thing done right away. That's how I am. Get my stuff done so it's not hanging over my head. That's important to do. So real quick, and this is a question that you might not know the answer, but I guess a general answer is fine. What percentage of people these days in these contests actually live in Nevada, and what percentage don't? And then has it been growing externally?
I mean, without a doubt, it's growing externally. The contest would not be the same without allowing a proxy to put picks in and being able to sign up. Just getting into Vegas to sign up in person is the most challenging part for most people. But the fact that they allow that is really fueled the growth of the contest. So, I mean, I'm not sure, like if I was going to take a guess, I would say it's over 80% of the people come from outside Nevada. I don't think it's, I think it's a much smaller percentage, like maybe even closer to 10%. You'd have to really talk to the sports books and get their numbers as far as where the entries are coming from, what states and stuff. But I mean, I would say it's close to 90% that come from outside of Nevada, just because, I mean, people are coming in to sign up all the time. I mean, we're doing a lot of great business, and I can tell you, we have a few locals that use us just because they like to have kind of the reminder of being able to put the picks. We will follow up with people if we haven't gotten their picks. We'll reach out to you and stuff like that. And if somebody puts it on themselves to do it, I mean, there were a lot of kind of horror stories from Circa last year of guys oversleeping that, I was going to put them in on the app and I missed the deadline. And, like I said, with the Survivor contest, you miss the deadline and you're knocked out. That's $1,000 down the toilet. So, it's important to have a proxy to really keep you on top of what you're supposed to be doing. We always try to tell people like that all we want them to worry about is picking winners. Also, we'll handle everything else. And we'll make sure that you stay on point. You get the lines in a timely manner so you could handicap as far in advance as possible, and just worry about picking the winners and we'll do the rest.
Right. And a board's a play, right? You can't just like, I'm going to pick all my survivors every week so I don't miss one, then I can keep changing it. That doesn't work, right?
What's that with the Survivor?
Yeah, with either, really. I mean, you can't pick once your picks are in, they're in. Like, so that's the thing about missing it. People might overthink too much, then party too hard Saturday, Friday night, whatever, and then miss their deadlines. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to throw my pick in Wednesday, and I'll be able to change it. Correct?
Right, exactly. Once they're locked in, once we get them in at the book, there's nothing we could do about it. So, I mean, we want to make sure that you take as much time as you need. That's why we offer different deadlines for people. We have like a kind of a less expensive service with a Friday deadline for people who aren't as worried about injuries and following line moves. If a lot of people just know their picks, early in the week when the lines come out, and then they have them locked in. But some people want to wait to the last minute and take as much time as they need. And we encourage you to do that because, you're paying for the deadline to have that extra time. And, we want you to be successful. We want you to use whatever information that you have to have the best week you can. And we try to work with you. That's why we offer the latest deadline of any proxy in the Circa contest at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And I mean, we work our butts off to get everything in, and we want to make sure that you have as much time as you need, especially with the COVID stuff. I mean, that was a big factor last year with guys, not being able to play or having to adjust things and everything like that. So it's pretty important to get as much time as you can.
Oh, for sure. And that's 1 p.m. on Saturday Pacific time, correct?
Well, yeah, you got it. Because the picks need to be in at the book for Circa by 3 p.m. Pacific time. So that gives us like a couple hours to make sure that everybody's in and double check to make sure all the picks are matching up correctly and all that. So, we need to do our due diligence, and it gives us enough time, but we also max it out for you guys as well.
So what are the most popular contests in Las Vegas right now?
Well, we touched on the Circa contest. I mean, they launched their sports book a couple years ago and got into the game with the Circa Million in their first year. And they had about 1,800 entries, and they almost doubled that last year. They had about 3,300. The Super Contest is pretty much a very similar format. The only main differences with those two are just the in-season bonuses that you can play for. The Super Contest switched things up a little bit. So now there's 9 in-season bonuses. So basically every 3 weeks you're playing for like a smaller pot, like $25,000, $50,000, stuff like that, where Circa has quarterly bonuses associated with them, but their pots are much bigger. So you're talking about a base of $150,000 per quarter. And then if they hit over 4,000 entries in the Circa Million this year, any money over and above the amount that will help them avoid an overlay will go back into the pot and basically build up those quarterlies even more. So I think you're going to see the quarterly bonuses in the Circa Million of about 200,000 at least this year, which is a lot of money in itself. I mean, that used to be the top prize in the super contest back in the day. So I mean, you're talking, the opportunity to try to win that every quarter is pretty cool.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's that. They stepped their game up to match Circa. And that's what competition does, right? Everybody. That's why people want competition. That's why competition works, because it makes everybody more accountable. They're not going to cut out their piece of the pie there. And Circa did a great job. Now, I almost think that their contest is probably just as prestigious as a super contest.
Well, yeah, they've definitely taken over with the most entries and everything like that. They did that last year. They had almost 3 times as many entries, I think, as the super contest last year. And this year I would expect the Circa Million to be probably twice as many entries as the super contest. I think the super contest will have between 2,000 and 3,000 entries, where Circa will have between 4,000 and 5,000. But yeah, I mean, and again, Circa guarantees their prize pool they pay out the top 50 overall, and then they've got the quarters.
Had a little technical difficulty, but Manny was talking about the guarantees, how the Circa is getting more people in last year, 3 times as much than the super contest, and you expect it to be 2 times as much this year. Correct, Manny?
Yeah, that's right. I see the super contest is definitely going to get back to kind of over 2,000 entries. I think that's a no-brainer. They should have no problem getting past that number. Whether they hit over 3,000 kind of remains to be seen. Their all-time record, I think, was about 3,300 3 years ago. So, I mean, it's gonna kind of take a lot to kind of build up their pot, because their contest is structured a little differently in terms of the payouts, where everything in the super contest for the overall prizes is based on the number of entries. So the whole thing with the Circa Million is that they guarantee $1 million to the winner no matter what, and then they pay out the top 50 spots. Super contest this year dropped from the top 100 down to the top 30 to try to kind of beef up the spots a little bit more. But I mean, everything's based on how many people enter. So the more entries, the better for that pot, and that's kind of where you saw prizes of over $1 million for a couple of years. Before the pandemic, and in the last year they took a big dive, obviously, because a lot of people switched to Circa because of the guaranteed money, and now they're trying to build back up. So, I mean, both contests are great in their own right. It just depends on kind of what you want to do. The number one question I've had is, which contest do I do between the Circa Million and the super contest, because they're both $1,000 to enter. Super contest no longer takes a rake, so it's 100% of the entry fees are going into the pot again, which is great. But each of them have kind of their own positives, as far as, do you want to play in a contest where there's going to be 4,000 to 5,000 entries going against you, or would you rather be in a contest with half that? But also you have to consider the pot's going to be a lot smaller. So right. It kind of depends on what you want to go for. I think the winning numbers, when all is said and done, like the winners are in both of those contests are going to be very comparable. Like the numbers, the points that are, you got to hit about 70% to win these contests. So that's, no matter what, that's not going to change. It's not going to be like, oh, well, there's only 2,500 entries in the super contest. I can, hit 65% in that contest to win it. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be the winner. Odds are it's going to be in both contests anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's why I tell everybody this: if they can enter both of them, you're going to basically, if you do both contests, you'll be playing for something every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks. There's a lot of mini contests that you're going to end up getting for your money if you do both.
Okay, so and I know it was a COVID year, and Circa guaranteed $1 million. They paid their first place person $1 million. What did the super contest pay for first last year?
It was like between 300,000 and 400,000, I believe, somewhere around there.
And their buy-in was 1,500 last year too. It was not 1,000.
Correct. Yeah.
So I am concerned for that. I don't know why that the Westgate did not step their game up a little bit and guarantee. Maybe it's just they're really afraid of that loss. I don't know, but Circa really stepped up there. I think the Westgate probably still has the prestige just because it's the super contest, right? Maybe. But
yeah, most people know the name, the super contest, but Derek Stevens and his team over there at Circa is doing a heck of a job building up their name. And I mean, they're already, the resort is doing extremely well. The new Circa Resort Casino downtown. I mean, if you have a chance to go check it out, I definitely recommend it. It's a great property, and it's something that, I think a lot of people just want to come and see, and then you see their sports book and spend some time there, and it's hard not to just get into the football contest and know that you're participating in some of the best contests in the world, if not the best, with the Circa Million and the Circa Survivor.
Right, and obviously Stadium Swim upstairs at the pool is something you're going to want to check out.
Yeah, it's an awesome property. Absolutely, yeah.
So great stuff. We had about a minute left. William Hill has finally stepped up their game here, and it sounds like they have a new contest for some of us college football folks. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so their college pick'em, they came back this year. Last year was knocked out both the football contests that are on the college slate with the Golden Nuggets Ultimate Football Challenge. That they took the year off last year, and then William Hill took out the college pick'em, but brought it back this year in a big way, in guaranteeing $1 million prize pool. The old entry fee used to be $500 an entry, and now it's $1,000 an entry. But they are guaranteeing $500,000 to the winner of that contest, and it involves picking 8 college games against the spread every week for 10 weeks. So you get action for 10 weeks, and they pay out the top 10 in that contest. But that's a big step up from where it was, a couple years ago.
Oh, for sure. And
that's
question,
definitely one you want to check out. Yeah.
And quick question about that: if they get a ton of more entries, doesn't that 500,000 get bigger? And same with the Circa.
Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't hit that number of entries to avoid the overlay. I mean, you'll hear Circa talk about an overlay quite a bit. It's a great marketing tactic to try to get people to come in, but there's never been an overlay with Circa. I think there's a possibility that there could be one in the college pick'em for William Hill with that guaranteed money that they've put up. But with Circa, I really think Survivor, it's going to be hard, I think, to overtake the Circa Million in terms of more entries. But I mean, I think both of those, there should be a good chance that they hit their numbers.
Well, if there's if there's no overlay, do they pay that out? Is the question.
For what? For the college pick'em?
I guess it's probably a good question for either. So basically, they're going in the red, negative EV. That's what we like to hear. Overlay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's what us sports players love to hear.
Well, yeah, they're guaranteeing that money whether they hit their number or not. So college pick'em contest, I think there's a chance for an overlay in that one. But yeah, and even the Circa Survivor, it's really, I mean, they're going to pay out what they pay out. They're basing it on 6,000 entries or whatever to get. So I mean, they might have to. They're going to guarantee that pot as well, just like they did last year. And the Circa Million, I think, it needs to hit 4,000 entries. They're going to, like I said, I expect them to get between 4,000 and 5,000 entries in that contest.
So the extra money will also get paid out, meaning that the quarterly prizes might be bigger, right?
Correct. Yeah. So like I said, with the Circa Million, if they go over 4,000 entries, then any overage they get goes right back into the quarterlies. That's why last year you saw the quarterlies were like $170,000 instead of $150,000. Okay. And I expect that to be like more closer to the 200,000 range for the top prize each quarter, which is a ton of money. So I mean, that's those pots alone make that contest worth playing for, because I think. I don't want to say it's easier to hit a quarter than it is the season, but the season is such a grind. It's to win the $1 million. It's such a marathon where a lot of these guys, it's easier to kind of sprint towards that quarterly bonus. You get hot for 4 weeks or whatever, And normally it takes about like a 17-3 record, 17-3, 18-2. If you're going to do well in these contests, you'll hit a hot spot at some point, and I think that quarterly is it's so appealing to play for one of those, especially when it's talking about $200,000.
Yeah, you're never really out. That's you could have sucked for the first 8 weeks, but you're still playing for another quarter, and that's what's so attractive about these contests, my man. Well, where can our listeners get your great information to sign up for these contests, Matty?
Or just go to footballcontest.com. That's where we've got everything. We break down every major contest that we proxy for. So you can just go to footballcontest.com and check all that stuff out. You can get information on every contest. You can find out more about us, about our experience, how long we've been doing it, how we can set up a meeting. We do. I mentioned earlier too that you could pay the entry fees with credit cards, but you can also pay for our proxy service with credit cards right online, which most of our clients do before they even get to Vegas, so they don't have to even worry about that. And that's a big deal because, like I said, you want to keep your cash in your pocket if you can, and be able to spend that on other stuff in Vegas and not have to worry about coming out of pocket, to pay for proxy fee or an entry fee. And the ability to pay a credit card is like kind of a game changer too with the contest. Is that these guys love to come in and get their points for their entry fees and their proxy fees and stuff like that, and we try to make it as easy as possible and give you that opportunity to pay that way as well.
They love to get their airline miles so they can fly back to Vegas again.
Exactly.
So there you go. Make sure you guys check out Matty at footballcontest.com. Tell them the OddsBreakers sent you. Matty, thanks so much for coming on this show. I'll see you in August.
Thank you. Can't wait. Appreciate it.
Now it's time to bring in college football broadcaster and NFL insider, Mr. Ross Tucker. And now I'm very excited to bring back a former NFL player and Princeton University two-time All-American. You've seen and heard him broadcast many football games over the weekend, and of course on Even Money, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, and the College Draft. I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Ross Tucker to the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, man, thanks for coming back on the show. Are you ready for some football?
Yeah, I mean, Kiev, it's here, man. Let's do it. All the training camps are open now. All the teams are practicing now. We're getting all kinds of news and nuggets on players and injuries, unfortunately, and everything every day. So it's, once it starts, it doesn't stop till after the Super Bowl.
That's right. That's right. We're going all the way through the Super Bowl, baby, and I'm super excited. This is my favorite time of year, prepping. You got some preseason coming on. We just did a podcast about some preseason angles. Just good stuff left and right. So I know you're stoked, and you just got back from vacation last week, man. How was that?
It was great. Yeah, thank you for asking. We went, I've never been there before. The Outer Banks of North Carolina. Went with my sister and her family. It was nice. They live in D.C., so we don't get to see them as often. So, and my sister's kids are all older. They're all teenagers, and so it was great for them to be with my daughters and, help them out in the ocean and stuff. It was awesome, man. It was great. I've had an awesome summer, but I know how my seasons go. I get about 6 months, quote unquote, off from like February 11th to August 11th. But August 11th, I think, is the Eagles' first preseason game. And once that happens, I'll be in the booth for that one. And I go hard for 6 months.
Oh, I'm sure, man. No sleep, working 7 days a week. That's how you roll, Ross, because you're one of the hardest working NFL insiders in the business. Before we get into each division here, and we're going to talk about that with some win totals and some potential future plays, do you have any thoughts on how things might be different or the same from last year? I mean, this is the first time that we haven't had crowds in the NFL forever, really, for before our time. And, there's some interesting numbers out there. Scoring seemed to go up significantly. If just, for example, in 2019, scoring was 45.6 points per game combined. to 49.5 in 2020. Do you think things are going to kind of adjust back to what they were in 2019, or do you see any trends moving up?
So I think it's going to go down a little bit. I think crowd advantage really makes a difference for the offense. And I've been there, Kiev. I mean, I've been there when you're in silent count and the crowd's going crazy, 80,000 people, and either you have a false start penalty or the defensive end gets a great jump on you because you can't hear the count. It makes a difference. And I think we'll find out this year how much of a difference it really makes. But I'm going to be leaning heavy on some unders early in the season if we have jam-packed stadiums again, because I really do believe crowd noise can be a big advantage for the defense. Obviously, the home team's defense, but it's absolutely a factor I think should be considered. And I can, like I said, speak from experience. Never liked, obvious passing downs, so loud, have to go silent, and you got some stud rusher you're going against. Not fun.
No, definitely not fun. Hard to get your snap counts in for sure on those massive away games, especially in like New Orleans and some of those louder stadiums, Kansas City, right? So it's going to be interesting to see the change. And when somebody first asked me this question, a very smart individual, I misread 2019. I thought I read 48.6, but no, it's 45.6. So definitely some potential regression. But what I will say, Ross, is that Vegas really had, or I shouldn't even say Vegas. I'm going to say the sports betting market kind of had this down, because even though last year was the first year that road teams won over 50% of the games, 127 and 126, ATS betting was down on the dog at $572 for $100 bettors. And in 2019, ATS was a lot more favorable on the road team at 2,721. So I thought that was pretty interesting. When I remember looking at the lines.
Hold on a second. You said two different things. I want to make sure I understand. You said on the dog.
I
missed talking road team.
I meant to say road team instead of the dog. So
okay.
So thanks.
I
thanks
want
for
to make
clarifying.
sure. All right.
No, thanks for clarifying that. But what I did notice, just in straight lines and straight power ratings wise, there wasn't a massive adjustment. I would have thought maybe like a half a point different for home field advantage just from what the market said. But man, ATS 127 and 126. I feel like the market had it down pretty well.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I take every situation on its own, Kiev, but my inclination early would be to lean on some unders and lean on the home teams with the crowd noise. I just feel like there's a lot of people, Kiev, that are going to be like uncaged animals, man. Now, who knows what's going on with this Delta variant? And I don't want to go down that road. I hate talking about that stuff. Yeah. But, I don't know. Maybe it has an impact on how many people come to the games or how many people are allowed to come to the games. I don't know, man. All I know, though, is if it's packed stadiums, absolutely helps the home team, absolutely helps the defense.
And this could be your big home correction, because in 2018, home teams were 152 and 99. So road teams did not fare well that year. The big correction happened in 2019, where money line road teams were making a lot of money. But good stuff to talk about. And yeah, of course, the whole COVID thing, who knows what's going to be laid out in front of us. All we can go is by our information that we have available to us. Well, let's get into a few of these divisions then, my man. Let's start with the NFC North. Do you have any season win totals or future plays in this division?
Yeah, so by the way, I won't say I'm on a book that I can't really figure out the rhyme or reason to how they have it listed. It would be nice if they had it listed as all of them in the same division. Man, they got the Lions at 4.5, huh?
Yeah, the market outlook isn't too high on them, is it?
No, I mean, that is low. Rattle them off for me, Kiev, and I'll tell you what I think.
All right, sure. We'll start with the Green Bay Packers. They're up top here, and their season win total has been sitting around 9. Now, obviously, we have some Aaron Rodgers news that he's coming back. Obviously, went into the stadium. He's pretty much a done deal. I mean, why else would he not be still in Hawaii? And he might be playing. You have the Chicago Bears at 7.5. You have the Minnesota Vikings at getting close to 9 here, a juiced 8.5, and like you said, 4.5 on the Lions.
And what did you say for the Packers again? 10?
It was at 9 where I saw it. So I'm going to pull it.
Oh,
right
really?
back. I wrote them all down, so let me write it.
Oh, I just saw where I was just looking, they were up to 10.
Okay, so that adjustment must have just happened with.
I don't know if that was an old number you had or not. In fact, the one I'm looking at now has the Packers all the way up to 10.5.
Okay, wow. Then that's so 10.5 is pretty high. Why don't you go by 10?
By 10, I would lean over. I mean, they've won 13 games 2 years in a row. I don't think that they're really worse. I do think it's maybe a last dance scenario for Rodgers. They're playing a 17th game. Concerns would be O-line health, losing Lindsley, bringing back Bakhtiari after the torn ACL, and they got a new defensive coordinator. I think their defense will take a step back. I'd still lean over, though. I still think there's a lot more chance they win 11 or 12 in a 17-game slate than they win 8 or 9.
All right, so you think that they're going to go over. I made what I like in this division, I took a couple future plays. Right when the Rodgers news came out way back in May or whatever it was, I did grab them. It was either the Bears or the Vikings to me, right? The Vikings were sitting at about plus 300. The Bears were at plus 600. I think there's not that much of a difference. So I did take the Bears at plus 600. But last week I hedged back and went double on the Packers at minus 120 that they win the division. Now, there's a lot of people on the Vikings. What I will say is they do have an easier schedule than the Bears, but that would be the team I'm probably rooting against because if the Packers or the Bears hit it, that would be a winning ticket for me. Any future bets on this?
Yeah, I kind of like the over for the Vikings at 8.5. I kind of like now this one has the Lions at 5 and the Bears at 7. I'd probably lean under on the Lions, man. I don't know that they get a 5th win. And for the Bears, 7 seems about right to me because it's a matter of when they actually go ahead and put a guy like Justin Fields in there at quarterback.
Right. That could happen sooner or later. All depends upon what Andy Dalton does to start this year. Let's move on to the NFC South then, and I'll start right here. I'm just going to tell you right now, I went under on the New Orleans Saints, and I did that at the 9, and I can go look for an updated number. I think it's pretty close to around 8.5 to 9 right now. I know there's some bad news on their left tackle, as well as Thomas is going to be missing some time, their best receiver. But the thing with me is I don't like the quarterback thing. I don't like the whole Winston and Taysom Hill going back and forth here. Now, when there's Breeze there in certainty, then it's okay to have a Taysom Hill. When it's Winston and Hill, I think that causes problems with the team. Plus, this team lost everybody in free agent. Trust me when I say this, Ross. I do not like betting against Sean Payton. It has not been a profitable thing, and I almost wanted to cut my arm off as I was walking to the window, right? But either way, I got there. Any place for you in this division?
Yeah, so I kind of like the under on the Saints as well. I think Michael Thomas is a big loss. I do think they have a good offensive line. I came out with my offensive line rankings this week and talked about them on the Fantasy Feast podcast, but they've got some issues defensively. I'm not down with the quarterback back and forth either. I don't know that they'll settle on a guy, and not having Michael Thomas as a security blanket for that guy is not good either. I think there will be too heavy of a load on Alvin Kamara. I kind of like the Saints under as well. Falcons at 7 feels about right to me. I kind of like the under on the Carolina Panthers. Carolina's at 7.5. I don't like their offensive line. I don't really think Sam Darnold's a big upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not convinced that he is. I don't think Carolina gets there. I think Carolina and Atlanta are both about 6-7 win teams, and Carolina has to get to 8. I'm not sure they do.
I think the better play on Carolina is to make the playoffs at plus 275 because maybe Darnold in this contract year is going to be good. And you have to look at it from a travel perspective too. They're on the East Coast. I know they're in the NFC South, but they play the NFC East and the AFC East for their conference play. Their at-large games is a third-place schedule, and that's the Houston Texans right there. And they get the Vikings at home at least, right? And then they do have to go to Arizona, but there's a chance they could win that game. So I think that's a better play at plus 275. Let's move on to the NFC West. Man, this division might be the best in football, Ross.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The Rams have the 4th highest win total I'm seeing right now, at 10.5. That seems high to me. I know people are all about the Rams Super Bowl. I'm a little nervous about them losing their offensive line coach, Aaron Cromer. Now I know Kevin Carberry from Stanford did a good job, but that's I don't know what happened there where they lost Cromer, but that's not a guy I would have wanted to mess with. So that's some kind of insight there to keep in mind. Rams at 10.5, Niners at 10.5, Arizona Cardinals at 8. You're right about this division. Seattle at 9.5. I think they're all going to be bunched up. I would lean more towards the Seattle over and the Arizona over rather than going for the Rams and Niners to get that 11th win.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams, a lot of hype. Everybody's on them. But we've seen Matt Stafford before in the clutch. And even though he can be a great quarterback when they're behind, I haven't seen him really on a great team yet. So I have a lot of questions. I'm staying away from this division, but I do agree with you on your lean on the Arizona side. Let's move on to the AFC then. We have the AFC North.
AFC North is fascinating. I think Cleveland 9.5 is too low. I mean, Cleveland, I'd be very surprised they don't win double-digit games. I think Cleveland gets to at least 10 wins. Pittsburgh at 8.5. I'd be surprised if they don't get to 9 wins. Baltimore at 11.
Ross, you have Cleveland at 9.5. I'm seeing juiced over 10.5 for Cleveland where I'm looking. That's a great.
Yeah,
that's
right
a great
now
number.
this is VegasInsider.com, and this is from July 25th. Let me see another one.
Yeah, that's.
You're right. I'm seeing another one where it's 10.5. So I don't know. Why don't you give me the numbers that we're working off of, Kiev? Because you're right. That's a really important point, I think, is make sure you shop around and make sure you're looking at, the right numbers. The Browns, I'm looking at DraftKings now. You're right. They're at 10.5 with a juiced over. I'd probably still lean to the over, but I wouldn't feel great about it.
Yeah. So with Cleveland, they're a stacked roster. But as we discussed before this year, their expected win total was actually under the 50%. That worries me a little bit, but man, the second best roster in all of football, and that schedule is just looking so easy. I think their first 8 or 10 games is against some of the worst NFL defenses. So I'm probably not touching it, but 10.5 seems about right to me. But Baltimore's at 10.5. Pittsburgh's the one everyone's low on at the 8.5. So I would probably lean to the over in Pittsburgh. And
I'm over on Pittsburgh. Look, they always win at least 9 games. Mm-hmm. I mean, didn't they win 9 games with Duck Hodges? I mean, or at least close to it. Yeah. Pittsburgh will get 9 or 10 wins somehow, some way. I would lay off of Baltimore. I'd probably lay off of Cleveland. And as for the Bengals, trying to find the Bengals here.
6.5 is what I saw.
I would lean under there. They're going to have to, that new offensive line, they're going to have to prove it to me.
Okay, I agree with you there. Not touching that with unless I see a completely fixed offensive line. Don't like their coach either. So I stayed away mostly, but the Steelers at plus 400 or plus 350 to win the division ain't a bad look either. Let's move on to the AFC South then with a few minutes left. Anything in the division that has the two pretty good teams and two horrible teams?
Yeah, really, right? I mean, the Texans are at 4 right now. That is unbelievable. I kind of like the Jags under 6.5. I don't know that Urban Meyer's style is going to work, especially right away. So I kind of like the under 6.5 for the Jags. I like the under 9.5 for the Colts, Kiev. Look, I watched every snap Carson Wentz played in his career. I watched every snap last year. He was the worst quarterback in the NFL. He was. I mean, he was the single worst quarterback in the NFL last year. Now, he might be better. That's certainly possible. But I don't know that we can count on that. I'd rather go on the under right now. They have a left tackle issue, and they have a guy that was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. And Titans at 9 sounds about right to me.
Okay. I lean Jacksonville under just because I don't think Urban Meyer is an NFL coach. It's going to be a lot different when he doesn't have 5-star guys and he can't spread it out as much. So in my opinion, there's a reason why his quarterbacks fail. But that's the only thing I really have there. I disagree with the Colts only because Frank Reich had his best year with Carson Wentz, right? When they're on the Eagles, Ross. But speaking of the Eagles, I just blew over that division, man. I'm fading Dallas at 9.5 wins on the under. But this division is looked at as, well, it was the worst division in the NFL last year. Do you have anything quick on the East, the NFC?
Yeah, I think Dallas's number at 9 is about right. I like Washington over 8.5.
Okay.
I think Fitzpatrick's a huge upgrade there. I think Washington gets to 9 or 10 wins. They got a pretty darn good defense, and I think he's a big upgrade, like I said. And call me a homer because I do their preseason games on TV. I don't care. I like the Eagles over 6.5. I just said earlier, Carson Wentz led the NFL, Kiev, in sacks and interceptions. He didn't play the last 4 games. You're the math guy. That's 25% of the season. He did not play, and he led the NFL in sacks and interceptions. Hard to do. Really hard to do. If Jalen Hurts is just the 27th best quarterback in the NFL, or even if he just takes 5 less sacks and 3 less picks, they probably win 2 more games.
I am concerned for what you said. That's true. Now, you did get beat up a little bit on even money on the Eagles. It seems like everybody's been fading the Eagles, Ross.
Everybody on the Even Money podcast comes on and tells me how much they're fading the Eagles, how much the Eagles suck. Now they signed Steve Nelson at corner, so they've got even more talent there. I think the Eagles are going to be better than people think.
All right. Well, and I don't disagree because I have them around 6.5, 7 wins. So I'm going to be that guy that doesn't say I'm going to bash the Eagles. They are in a honeymoon year with the new coach. Jalen Hurts is kind of a poor man's Lamar Jackson to me. For now, he has some upside, but that's just going to be so interesting how that turns out. It was Wentz the problem, or was it just the rest of the team? It's so exciting to watch that. And I did fade Dallas under the 9.5 because I just don't like McCarthy. Real quick, AFC East or any AFC West, any plays in those 2 divisions?
AFC, I'll go AFC East. I kind of like the Dolphins under. That's one that's jumped out to me. I'm not a Tua believer. AFC West, the one that jumped out to me is I'm kind of under on the Broncos too. I'm not a buyer in their quarterback market. I don't think they get to 9 wins. So I'm under the 8.5 on the Broncos, under the 9.5 on Tua and the Dolphins. There's a reason why these teams are rumored for Deshaun Watson, right? There's a reason. Their quarterbacks aren't great.
No, they're not. Definitely good points there. Denver just has the easiest schedule according to a Vegas win total perspective, which worries me a little, but I still side on the side of their quarterback is just not there. Maybe he's got some extra motivation. We had all those Aaron Rodgers rumors, but it's a tough division with LA moving up. I think LA did a great job on their coaching hires. I was considering maybe a future play on the Chargers. I'm not quite there yet, but not out of realm. The one I'm going to take is Sean McDermott as a specialty prop for Coach of the Year. Now, the Buffalo Bills, as far as a Super Bowl future, you're not going to get a great price on that, but you can get McDermott anywhere from 16-1 or 30-1, and he was kind of snubbed last year. I do like the fact that at least their at-large games are against Pittsburgh and Tennessee right there. Of course, they do get the Chiefs, but I could see Sean McDermott getting Coach of the Year. So I'm going to stick with that one, Ross. We're out of time, though, my man. Do you have any other plays in the NFL that you want to go over?
No, I don't do a lot of what I call needle in the haystack bets, primarily because Fezzik tells me not to on the Even Money podcast. He doesn't like the math there. So I stay away from the defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year, those type of things for the most part, unless I see something really, really juicy.
No, that's in general the way you should look at it, because in most of these sports books, the futures on a lot of these teams are absolutely horrible. So think of it, if you're going to take a shot with a needle in the haystack, you better find a number that's like a needle in the haystack. Ross, thank you so much for coming on this show. Where could our listeners find your wonderful shows and information?
Yeah, just check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. All of the shows, the Ross Tucker podcast, which is daily NFL info, Even Money, the betting one, Fantasy Feast for the fantasy guys. All of that stuff is available, rosstucker.com or at Ross Tucker Pod on social. But if you guys are listening to this, you know how to listen to podcasts. Please do me a favor, check those out. I can almost guarantee you'll like them, especially the Even Money podcast.
Yes, it is a fantastic show. Make sure you guys go and check that out. Now, to finish up our guests, we are going to bring in Mr. Adam Burke from ats.io. And now I'm very happy to bring back one of the best in the business of sports betting as well as podcasting. It's someone who I've followed for a very long time, Mr. Adam Burke. You can follow him on Twitter at Skating Tripods. Adam, baseball season's kind of rounding the corner here with the trades and the trade deadlines going on. College football's ramping up. How are things going with you this summer?
Busy, man. But it's nice. I mean, last year at this time, we weren't really sure what we were going to have. We did wind up having an abbreviated and certainly strange college football season and, obviously the 60-game MLB season. So it's been nice. I will never take any sport, operating the way it should for granted ever again.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. And last year was a complete crazy, I'm just going to say it, shit show. And this year we somewhat got back to normal, but I'm just trying to block everything in the media out of my head because I don't want to think about anything bad happening, man. I'm gonna have try to glasses half full approach to the rest of this, of everything that goes on. Maybe except for this next question that I have, because I don't know what your thoughts are, but obviously the elephant in the room when it comes to college football is the talk about Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC. So I can't imagine that your thoughts are too much different than mine as it is. But I mean, when you heard that news, how did it affect you? Did you kind of believe it at first, and what are your thoughts on how it could impact college football?
Well, I think every program, whether they say it or not, wants to be in the SEC. I mean, you get the pick of the litter with recruits. It's a major selling point to sit there and say, hey, come here because we play in the SEC. You get 9 SEC games every year. Come play with us. And of course, now, with everybody making money off of their image and likeness and all of that, certainly it helps to be in a conference such as that. So it's something I think probably was in the works, but possibly got expedited a little bit, by Oklahoma and Texas with what's happening on the national landscape. But, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think about Oklahoma and, they probably want to play better teams during the regular season just so that they can give themselves a better chance once they get to the college football playoff. And Texas, for their sake, I mean, look, Texas A&M is the only Texas school in the SEC. And so they have to fight with them from a recruiting standpoint because it's, do you want to play in the Big 12 or do you want to play in the SEC? And I think a lot of kids are going to be very one-sided on that issue. So not really surprising to me. The one thing I will say is if you're the Big 12, you damn well better find a way to get Boise State to jump ship from the Mountain West to the Big 12 because you're going to have to find a way to replace two pretty powerful programs.
100%, Adam. But to go even farther on that, I'm just going to tell you from my case, just being a Badger fan, for selfish reasons, you're absolutely right. I would love it if Wisconsin went to the SEC. I mean, how could you not want that, right? You have the backing of the SEC, you have the fandom, you have the organization is run a lot smoother than the Big Ten, as we saw last year. The Big Ten, you had to drag them kicking and screaming to have a season, while the SEC is like, what's going on? Nothing's wrong with us, right? And then you also have the backing of ESPN. I mean, let's face it. ESPN says which teams are going to be good and which teams aren't. Now, of course, they can't BS their way too much through it. But when it comes to teams that are close, many times I've heard Paul Feinbaum out there, Tebow, Canal, people talking about how the SEC team is going to be better than the Big Ten team or anybody in other conferences. I think that's important to have that backing. Now, is that fair to the rest of the conferences? Is that fair to the Big 12? Is that fair to the Pac-12? Probably not. But that doesn't matter, right? Because you care about winning, you care about recruiting, you care about your school being up in the lights. And if you're a recruit, that's where you want to go. Is it a massive conflict of interest that ESPN owns the SEC? Maybe. But who's going to stop that? So in my opinion, I think it's smart for Oklahoma and Texas to do that. Is it right? That's really the question, Adam.
Well, and of course, too, I mean, money makes the world go round in college athletics. As much as we say it's about the athletes, it's clearly not. And if you're in the SEC, I mean, you get access to CBS. You get that 3:30 time slot that everybody knows about. You get access to ESPN. You get access to ABC. And, of course, then, you've got all of that playoff support, all the bowl game support, everything else. The Big 12 is predominantly on Fox and FS1. And so from a TV standpoint, from the money that you can make off of the TV deals and the revenue and all of that, it also makes more sense for Oklahoma and Texas to jump ship from the Big 12 to the SEC. So, maybe it's something, too, that also, I mean, we always think about these things in the context of football as well. I mean, I think from a basketball standpoint, it's a little bit weird. I think that's a little bit strange. But from a football standpoint, it makes perfect sense. I don't know how they would sort of set up the framework for basketball, especially because, for me, if I'm Texas, do I want to leave the Big 12 in basketball for the SEC? I don't know. I don't know if Oklahoma cares either way. But there's also that element to it, too, of, we go to the SEC, and it's not just football. I mean, football is the primary revenue driver, but, all of your sports kind of go that route as well. So that'll be interesting to see. But I think another driving force behind this is the TV revenue, the tie-ins that the SEC has with multiple networks, as opposed to the Big 12 just primarily being with Fox. I guess maybe they kind of work into ABC every now and then, but not so much anymore. So I think that's, probably something that's kind of driving the bus here too.
Well, I think you nailed it right there. But the SEC's been getting better and better at basketball, as we've seen with LSU kind of showing up lately. Kentucky,
Arkansas, Alabama.
Look at Arkansas and Bama last year, right? You also have Kentucky, who's always been there, in Florida. So, I mean, they're becoming a power basketball conference. And even if that wasn't, you still have the network saying that they're good, which is going to affect the rankings anyway. The thing that you might see that happens, Adam, is if you are a fan of, like, say, a Boise State or maybe a Washington State, you might end up left out in the dust with all these conferences getting together. And it might be a smaller amount of teams that they're going to start calling FBS anyway, right? I mean, you might see a massive realignment coming down 5 years where the SEC is going to dictate what the college football playoffs are, because they're going to have power when it comes to that. And they already have the TV backing. So in my opinion, this could shorten the amount of teams that are considered Division I, or at least make it more of a premier type league, Adam. And I think that they might be heading in that direction.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. I mean, I also think too that, maybe something you could do is kind of group together a couple of the Group of 5 conferences, kind of maybe have a big super conference of Conference USA in the Sun Belt, something like that, where a little bit of consolidation, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing. It'd kind of be fun. Maybe you wind up with not seeing, the same team playing the same team every single year in and year out. You add a little bit more variability to the schedule. That could be fun. That could improve the college football product overall. So I don't know. Maybe this is, a couple of big dominoes that are, one of those viral videos that you see of dominoes set up throughout the house. Maybe these are just the first 2 to fall. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Well, that's a good glasses half full way to approach it for sure. Hopefully it does spread out some of the competition. That would be a good way to look at it. But, as far as just being an alumni from a smaller school, that would be a little bit of a concern for me. Either way, we're going to see it unfold because there's still a lot that's going to happen. All we've heard is just Texas and Oklahoma not renew 2024, 2025. That's all we know right now. The rest is all up to speculation. But let's get into something a little bit more important when it pertains to the odds breakers, and that is obviously some teams and how they're going to perform when it comes to their season win totals or possibly futures if you have anything in this division, because that's what we're going to talk about. And why don't we start here with a conference that you and I know very well in the Big Ten. Some changes happened this year. Obviously, lots of teams didn't play as many games as other teams did. What are your thoughts? Let's start with Ohio State. You are an Ohio State type guy. Do you have any thoughts on the direction they're heading after losing some of the big names, Justin Fields, Baron Browning, obviously Trey Sermon, and a few of the other guys?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty interesting year for Ohio State. I mean, they've got a stable of quarterbacks where nobody's really thrown a football in an FBS game. CJ Stroud should be the starter out of the gate, but obviously we'll kind of see what happens with them. Their season win total out there in the market is 11. Based on the lines that I have for their games here this season, my season win total number comes out to 10.76. So, with that, I think that, the markets are probably in line pretty well with where the Buckeyes are. Do have them power rated a little bit lower than I had them at the tail end of last season for obvious reasons here. But look, they're still going to be favored in every game. They're still going to be at least a touchdown favorite in every game according to the numbers that I have. So, this is one of those things where talent's going to kind of rule the day. And speaking of days, I'm really curious to see what Ryan Day does with this offense, what he does with Stroud. I do think Sermon to Teague is a little bit of a downgrade at running back. But also, Master Teague was coming off of a torn Achilles, I believe, last year, or an ACL, one of the two. So, he didn't really have a whole lot of burst. I mean, look, they're going to be good. It's a question of how good they're going to be. But I would be pretty surprised if they don't win the East Division and don't win the conference title game.
Yeah, I think every year I'd be surprised if that didn't happen with
That's fair. Very fair.
With Ohio State. And Ohio State's the most protected team as far as all this because they have literally the biggest fan base out of any college. So they can do what they want. Obviously, if they decided to hop ship someday, good for them, not good for anybody else. But hey, it's great. It must be good to be an Ohio State fan. I think you never have.
Oh, it's great. It's especially when you're a Cleveland sports fan. Otherwise, it's so great.
That's for sure. And that was hard to say as a Badger fan. But let's look into a couple other teams in this division. I'm going to give you 2 plays that I made in a lean. I'm taking the Penn State under 9 wins, and I am laying a little juice here around minus 130. A decent size play for a season win total. I'll make big plays on these. But I see losses at Wisconsin, their very first game. It is their very first game, so more vulnerable, I think. At Ohio State, I see that's a loss, and at Iowa. Those are the 3 losses that I think get you to 9. But you also have some potential losses here. You have potential versus Auburn, and I do have Penn State decently power rated over Auburn, but who knows, right? I have a potential loss against Indiana, who hasn't lost many players to transition. And we have Michigan, of course, kind of sitting there too, and throw in any of the other small teams that potentially could upset, like a Rutgers or something like that. Not even Ball State's not exactly a cakewalk. Ball State won their conference last year, right? And they also didn't really lose many players. So I have them at 7.5. The other one I have is Northwestern over 6. And I came in thinking I was going to bet Northwestern under because they do lose probably the most production out of any Big Ten team. And I think of any team in general. But then I have to look at what they got back. They got at least Ryan Helinski, who's capable and experienced. And it's all about their schedule. They avoid Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana this year. That's huge. I mean, because those are your top 3 teams in the East. I'm not going to mention Michigan because they're not in the top 3. And their non-conference is an absolute cakewalk the first few games. It's one of them's at Duke. I see 3 wins for there. So I took over 6. I laid a little juice myself. The only one that I lean under is Illinois at 3.5, but I'm going to see if that gets up to 4. I'm just not a Brett Bielema guy. Adam, any other thoughts in this division?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll talk about with Penn State here is, I've seen in the legal U.S. markets 8.5 being the total with some overjuice there, and in the global markets seeing 9. And this is why it's critically important to shop around for the best lines for these things. I actually have Penn State down in my projections at 8.66 wins, so right around that 8.5 minus 115 on the over type of range. But when you think about a 9, right? First of all, you get protection with the push if they go 9-3. Which, realistically speaking, if you look at their game-by-game spreads, 9-3 is what they should do, assuming they win as a favorite and lose as a dog. But how often does Penn State win 10 games? I mean, are we talking about that being like a 10th percentile outcome for them? Something like that? So they're far more likely to go 8-4, 7-5 than they are to go 10-2. And I do put together my season win total numbers in a way where it spits out an expected number of wins. But I think that's also a really important way to look at it is what has to happen for a team like Penn State to go over 9? They've got to win, 3 really tough games, all of them on the road. They have to win at least one of them probably, maybe 2 of them if they don't slip up somewhere. So, what is 10-2? To me, I think it's probably a 10th percentile outcome for them. Maybe
just lost you right there, right after the 10th percent outcome, but you're back. So totally agree here. The 9 is so much more important at minus 130 to me than even a plus 120 juiced over 8.5, or I'm sorry, under 8.5. I'd rather take a juiced 9 than a plus money 8.5 in this situation. I think you nailed it there. It takes so much to go over that 9. And then any other plays in the Big Ten or thoughts?
Yeah, there are a couple of thoughts I'm looking at here. In terms of looking at my numbers relative to what's out there in the market, looking at Nebraska under, I know that people want Nebraska to be good. And in fact, I'm kind of seeing a little bit better of a number out there in some places. A lot of 6.5, pretty heavy under juice, but I've got Nebraska at 5.85 wins for this season. I don't think this team is going to make the move that people really think it is. They're going to lose that Oklahoma game. We all know that. They've got a lot of games that are kind of in the toss-up range where they've got spreads plus or minus a touchdown somewhere in that 3-7 corridor. So I don't really see anything from this team that suggests to me that they can win those toss-up types of games. I would probably rather err on the side of them losing them as opposed to winning them. And I've got them a pretty clear dog in 5 games here so far. And look, to me, I don't think that this team is going to take the leap that people kind of expect. So that's one that I'm kind of toying with here in the Big Ten is taking a look at Nebraska under. Then one other one is I don't really get the love for Maryland. I'm not really seeing a reason why Maryland will flirt with bowl eligibility this year. My projection for them is 4.71 wins. Their non-conference is pretty weak. They play Howard. They play Kent State. They play they play a West Virginia team. It's a pretty big toss-up game, I would say. They should go 2-1 in the non-conference, but I don't see many easy conference wins for them. In fact, I don't have them favored in any of their conference games. They're a pick 'em at Rutgers to me. So I just think that, Maryland is a team. I think I would find it very difficult for them to not only get to a bowl game, but I think flirt with bowl eligibility. So I think I'm seeing under 6 out there minus 120, and I do like that one.
Oh, wow. You see under 6. I even said, I wrote down lean under 5, and this was a while ago when I did that. So I'm going to have to relook at that for sure. If I'm leaning under 5, I'm probably taking under 6. They lost Jake Funk, one of their starters. They do return a lot of production, but this defense was not good last year. So I'll take more of a dive into that one. Good stuff. Let's move on to the SEC then. And I only have one play that I'm probably going to make. And I was wrong a little bit about Bo Nix, in my opinion. I was pretty high on them as a possible upset candidate last year, and I got it flat wrong. But I think I watched him play. He's pretty good at home. He's just so bad on the road. And it's a juice 7. It's very juiced at minus 150, but I think I might have to take it because obviously they have the SEC West. So that you have your Bama, you have your Texas A&M, you have your LSU, and look at Ole Miss this year. Jesus, if I can get a super sweet number on Ole Miss, I'd throw some pizza money on it to see if I could win the SEC with them. That's another thing to say. But they also have, on the other side of the coin, Georgia. As far as the SEC East is concerned, they got that nasty Georgia game, and going to Penn State, like I said, is probably a loss. 5.5 is closer to my number, so that's my only play under 7.
The only one I'm looking at here in the SEC is Ole Miss. If you look out there in the U.S. markets, you find 7.5 flat with minus 110 both ways. Most of the global markets are showing a decent bit of overjuice on Ole Miss. And again, very important to shop around at whatever else you have at your disposal. I've got Ole Miss down for 8.17 wins. So this is my biggest overlay in the SEC. I typically want close to a full win overlay if I can help it before I really fire on a play, especially if I have to lay a little bit of juice with it. But this is one where if you find that 7.5 flat or maybe minus 120, something like that, Ole Miss has got a really potent, really powerful offense. I don't know what that defense is going to look like, but they're certainly capable of outscoring some teams here for this season. They are in that tough half of the division, to be sure. They've got no chance to win at Alabama. But other than that, I don't really see any games for them this season where I don't think that they have a chance to win. They're a big favorite in their non-conference games against Louisville, Austin Peay, and Tulane. That should be 3-0. They get a bye before Alabama. I don't know if that helps. I've got Alabama minus 21 in that game. But other than that, I don't see a clear-cut losing situation for Ole Miss. So I'm going to need them to win some of those coin flip games, but I think I've got enough margin here with my projection around 8.2 wins to take a look at over 7.5, assuming the juice isn't that bad.
Well, look at that. I teased it and you like it. So that's huge.
Funny how that works out, right?
It should all work out like this, Adam. This team was 7 yards per play. That's 6.97 on offense. And now their defense sucked, 6.67. But if that can just improve a little bit, why not give Old Lane a little shot right here? I liked how they finished with their bowl game. They just pounced on Indiana, and everyone was on Indiana that game. I think I even was, but thank God I had Scott over his yardage prop, and I barely made that one. I think that helped me make a slight profit. But 26-20, and Indiana should have scored more points against Ole Miss by the way they were giving up points, like 53 to LSU, 42 to South Carolina. If that defense takes a step up, Corral is going to be possibly a Heisman candidate, in my opinion. And I was going to save that to the end, but that's something that you might want to shop around is Corral for Heisman. 7 yards per play in the SEC West is pretty damn good. So
I got one more actually real quick from the SEC here it's tough. You got 130 teams here. You're kind of trying to look through these things, but Tennessee, I'm seeing out there 6, predominantly a little bit of under juice on them. Look, as much as people didn't like Jeremy Pruitt, I think Josh Heupel is a downgrade. I did not like the job that Josh Heupel did at UCF. And if Josh Heupel is going to go to Tennessee and run this super high-octane, fast-tempo offense with an offense that wasn't very good and a defense that wasn't all that great either, I don't know how that fits here. So I have Tennessee down for 5.22 wins. As I said, 6 with a little bit of under juice is kind of the market price on them. But I don't think this is a good first year for Josh Heupel. I don't think Josh Heupel is a very good head coach. I think he's an offensive coordinator by trade. So that's one that, I'm kind of looking at here as well, where I'm not a Tennessee guy. I mean, I got them a clear underdog at home against Pitt, got them a dog to Florida, Missouri, Alabama, and Kentucky. There'll be a dog to Ole Miss, a dog to Georgia. They're only going to be favored in 5 games to me. And that's Bowling Green, Tennessee Tech, South Carolina, South Alabama, and Vanderbilt. That's 5 wins. And this is exactly what we talked about with Penn State. How does Tennessee go 7-5? Do they beat Pitt? Okay, maybe. Do they beat Florida, Missouri, Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Georgia? No. So, I don't know. A 7-win season for them seems like a really low percentage outcome.
Yeah, if you get a 7, I wrote down 5.5 was my number. They lost their quarterback, Jarrett Gorentano, and everybody. And this team is kind of like the Indiana of college hoops to me. They recruit great, but they just can't put it together. And now they have a new coach on a honeymoon year. Man, this might be a dead under, dude. So good catch on that one. Let's move on to the Big 12, or the conference soon to be formerly known as the Big 12. Who knows what's going to happen? I got 2 plays here, and I don't know. I got
Kansas over 6, right?
For sure. You should actually tweak it and get some serious plus money and make it 8. But on the other, for real here, I'm taking 2 plus monies, and I'm just hoping one of them hits, right? I mean, that's profit if one of them hits. I got Baylor over 5.5 wins at plus 110. And I think I'm going out on a limb because I haven't seen a lot of love for Baylor, but I like Dave Aranda. He was great with Wisconsin. He was great with the LSU defense. And their non-conference is easy. At Texas State, Texas Southern, which is FCS, and a fully revamped BYU team that lost everybody. And their first conference game, at Kansas. There's 4 right there, most likely. They just need 2 wins for me to get plus money over this 5.5. They got to find it with like a Texas Tech or something at home. Maybe a West Virginia type team. Who knows? They'll catch TCU sleeping. I see this as a very attainable over 5.5, so I took them. But on the flip side, I hate doing this because Kansas State has really upset a lot of people, but I'm looking under 5.5 with Kansas State. And the reason it is they have a lot harder non-conference against Stanford and Nevada, believe it or not. Nevada, very, very good Mountain West team looking to finish towards the top like they did last year. And they return only 6 starters on offense and 3 on defense. So I'm closer to the 4.5 range with Kansas State, and I'm also getting plus 110 there. So if you guys like any of those, maybe you don't take both. Maybe you just take one. I went small on them both. Do you have anything in the Big 12, Ed?
I actually do. And maybe this is kind of a bold call, and maybe some people will sort of disagree with me on this one, but Oklahoma State under. Now, when I wrote up an article for over at ATS.io, and it's still priced that way at one of the U.S. books, it's priced at 8 under minus 125. Most of the market is under 7.5 now. So this is one that has kind of been bet a little bit, it looks like. But I have Oklahoma State down for just 6.97 wins this season. I think that this is going to be a difficult year for Oklahoma State. Now, they do bring back Spencer Sanders, and we could debate the merits of him, and it would probably take us an entire podcast to do that. But last year, there was a lot of internal criticism from within the program. Also, I just don't well now at Oklahoma State. I mean, you think about kind of the quarterbacks that they've had come through there, some of the wide receivers that have come through there. They're kind of a run and D kind of team. And I don't think that that's necessarily the best of fits here in the Big 12 Conference. Now, I do consider them a 1-point road favorite at Boise State. That's definitely the heart of a toss-up game. But they've got road games at Texas, at Iowa State, at West Virginia. There'll be a 2-touchdown dog or so to Oklahoma at home in the Bedlam game. And they've got a coin flip game against TCU. Maybe they become one of Kansas State's upsets this year because Kansas State always pulls one or two as you alluded to. But again, I don't see this Oklahoma State team winning 8 or 9 games. I think this could be a very challenging season for them. So the under from the boys in Stillwater is probably one of my favorite under season win totals here, especially from the Power 5.
They're probably going to look at the Tulsa game as a revenge game, but Tulsa returned a ton. Everyone but Zaven Collins. So that's interesting. They also lost that awesome tackle to the Bears and Tevin Jenkins, their best lineman, and Chuba Hubbard as well. So interesting take on that. Might have to dig into that a little bit. I don't like that they have Oklahoma at home. They're like sacrificing a road game or a home game to lose, and it's the end of the season. I almost would rather just gain a home game back by, a team that they can beat, right? So it's almost like a loss no matter where they play. So I like your point on that one. Let's move on to the next conference, the Pac-12. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I have nothing in this thing. And I think the Pac-12 South is just kind of loaded. I tried to make a case for Arizona State, high number. I tried to make a case for Utah, pretty high number. UCLA looked awesome last year. Then there's obviously USC. I mean, forget Colorado and Arizona, but I was thinking about making a future play, but none of the prices have been any good on the futures, just to let you know in most books. So usually by this time of year, Adam, I have like 3 or 4 future plays. I have 0 right now, so I'm still waiting to see. But I have nothing. Anything in Pac-12?
Yeah, maybe my favorite Power 5 over comes from the Pac-12. And what's kind of interesting here is, as we're talking, I'm going through and I'm comparing books. I'm comparing the global books and I'm comparing them against the U.S.-facing books. And something that's really interesting to me, I think it speaks to the clientele that bets on season win totals, is that the offshore market has much different juice than the U.S. market does right now. And I think that a lot of that speaks to the fact that a lot of public and recreational players don't even have college football in the brain yet. So, for example, just sort of citing a couple of books here, I assume it's okay to do this. If not, cut me out. Go ahead and stop me. But I know that you work relatively closely with a place like MyBookie for the site.
No, it's good.
Utah season win total 8.5 over -150 at MyBookie. Out there at DraftKings in the U.S. market, over 8.5 is -120, both at DraftKings and FanDuel. And I like the over here for this Utah team. And when I wrote this one up, it was -115 on the over juice, and that was coming from DraftKings. ATS is a U.S.-facing site. But I've got Utah here down for 9.54 wins. So I am a full win higher than what the line is for the Utah Utes. I've got them favored in 11 of their 12 games, got them favored at home against Oregon and Arizona State. The only underdog role I have for Utah is +1.5 at USC. So they do get Oregon, but they do avoid Washington in crossover play. And I think something that's really important here is that Kyle Whittingham is a great head coach. We know that. A very good defensive coach, very good head coach in the trenches. But also, assuming he wins the job, and I don't know why he wouldn't, Charlie Brewer has 39 starts. I mean, this guy's a proven 4-year starter coming from Baylor up to Utah. And I know we're talking about what Utah lost on offense and all of that, Zach Moss and Jake Bentley and so on and so forth, but I think Brewer's a really good fit here. It's a tough place to play in Salt Lake City. This is one of my favorite season win total plays here. I've got Utah down for 9.5 wins, and the line's only 8.5.
Wow. All right. So, yeah, they lost Jake Bentley, but like you mentioned, Charlie Brewer did amazing things with Baylor before Matt Rule left. They played Oklahoma and gave them a hell of a run a couple years ago. That might have been was that the Jalen Hurts Oklahoma team, or was it the Kyler Murray? I think it was the Kyler Murray Oklahoma team, but gave them a heck of a run. I like them possibly to win the Pac-12 South for sure. I did write them down for that. As far as the season win total, I agree. They return a ton of production, so I didn't bet it, but I'm going to take a deeper look into it because you mentioned it. Because I didn't have anything in the Pac-12, so can't leave that.
The only other one I had is kind of a lean toward Colorado under. Their win total 4.5, and the juice is kind of all over the place there with that one, but it does look like one that has taken some bets here of late with some under money on Colorado. 4.5 the number. I've got 3.97 wins for them. they got a tough schedule. They get Oregon and Washington from the North Division. They get all the teams in the South Division. They play Texas A&M. It's technically a neutral game. It's in Denver, but that's a line that's about Texas A&M minus 17, minus 17 and a half, something like that for me. So I think Colorado just has a really brutal schedule. Nothing against the team. I just think their schedule is really tough this year, and I'd find it very hard for them to get to 5 wins.
It is brutal. Wow. Yeah, in Denver, who cares where they're playing Texas A&M? Minnesota, that's very iffy right there. Minnesota probably would win that game. And then you have the only wins I only see is Oregon State for sure, and Arizona, man. That's it.
And Northern Colorado.
Yeah, and probably Northern Colorado, right? So, yeah, totally right on par with you. Let's move on to the ACC there. And before I give you my best play, Adam, I'm going to see if you're going to go against me. So you go first.
Oh, okay. All right, we can do that. I don't want to steal your thunder, so hopefully we're not on the same one here. But I like Boston College over. Boston College, their season win total is 7. I think Jeff Hafley's a really good head coach. Obviously comes over from Ohio State. Did a pretty good job last year. The only game that I really have Boston College a super clear underdog in is when they play Clemson. I mean, it's Clemson. But they avoid Miami. They avoid North Carolina. Their non-conference schedule is Colgate, UMass, and Temple. And they also play Missouri, and they get Missouri at home. So I've got them favored in that one. I got Boston College more like an 8-win team, but the market out there predominantly showing 7. Another one that has some overjuice on it now. A big reason why you should try to get in on these things as early as you can. But as I said, in the U.S.-facing markets, they're much slower to react. So I think Boston College over 7 is still a good look if you can find something in the minus 130 range.
Oh, you don't think UMass is going to beat them after that?
No.
that extra year rest that they got?
Let me go ahead. Let me know your play. I want to see what my Boston College line is against UMass. Out of curiosity here. Minus 35.
I'll take Boston College right there, but
they're on the road, by the way. But they're 35-point favorite.
That first Colgate game, you got to remember Colgate made the NCAA tournament, so keep that in mind. No, I wrote Boston College over 7. I didn't take it because I'm bitter at myself for not taking it at plus money and the 6.5. I'm probably going to force myself into doing it. So I agree with everything you said, and I got to tell you, man, Jurkovic there, Phil Jurkovic, he was a transfer from Notre Dame. The only reason he left is because Ian Book stayed for another year. He's a really good quarterback, 4-star guy. And so, man, Boston College is a sneaky team. And the fact that they go to Clemson, just like my point before, they're not screwing a home game over for that loss. So great stuff on that. My biggest play, Adam, is Duke over 3.5 wins at minus 130. And it's probably a couple stars. Look, David Cutcliffe is a good coach. I think I've heard you on Bang the Book and ATS.io for years talking about Cutcliffe with Brad Powers. And I always agree. He's a quarterback whisperer. He's not going to have another season like he did last year. I don't care what anybody says. He's usually a 5, 6, 7 win coach. And his first 4 games are Charlotte, who they beat last year by like 50 points. NC FCS right there. Northwestern at home, which Northwestern has the worst returning production out of any team, like mentioned, and Kansas. So are they winning 3 of those games, Adam?
I would say so. I mean, I got Northwestern, let's see. I got Northwestern 8.5-point favorite in that game. But other than that, no.
Yeah, you're pretty high on Northwestern. And I did even probably downgrade Duke a little bit. But that's 3 wins right there. And they're going to be good favorites against all of them. Kansas is at home, too, in case they decide to be good because Leopold's there, right? They got Georgia Tech at home. That could be a win. Pittsburgh at home, possible win. Louisville, which I don't like, possible win. A lot of good home games there. And Wake Forest is going through a lot of wide receiver transition right now. That's a game. Lots of options for Duke. I think getting that win should be simple. They're not going to go through the whole ACC without a win. So I'm taking over 3.5 here. And my other play is Louisville under 6.5. Tough non-conference versus Central Florida, they're not like the greatest team, and they just lost their coach, but still, it's Central Florida. They recruit well down there. I think they just got a 5-star recruit too. I think I read that. Ole Miss and Kentucky. Louisville's got a hell of a non-conference schedule there. I think they have one easy non-conference game. They lost Tutu Atwell, Des Fitzpatrick at wide receiver as well. Those 2 wide receivers, running back Javian Hawkins. I just don't trust Malik Cunningham that much. They're a good team at home, terrible on the road, but a tough home schedule. I'm taking under 6.5 at them.
Yeah, I'm pretty low on Duke for this season, and my projection is still 4.3 wins because they do have 3 pretty likely wins in that non-conference, and they'll find a way to win a game or 2 here in the ACC. Also, I do have a low projection for Louisville, 6.5. Their win total, I got 5.87 for them. What's really interesting about those 2 teams, and really interesting about this conference as a whole, I'll start with the turnover margin. Duke was minus 19 in turnovers last year in 11 games. They had 39 turnovers in 11 games. So if that doesn't get better, then David Cutcliffe should be out of a job. Louisville was minus 12 in turnover margin themselves. They had 24 turnovers in 11 games. So, maybe those 2 teams kind of improve from a turnover margin standpoint. But I still, as you said, Louisville's got a pretty tough schedule there. The other thing that's really tough for me about this conference, just sort of in general, is you've got Clemson, you've got Miami, you've got North Carolina, right? A lot of these other teams are power rated like within, a range of 6 points, basically. So the thing about the ACC that's really difficult, at least for me, is that I think a lot of these games are kind of in the toss-up range. They're, 55-45, 60-40, 65-35 types of games where I just think it's a really high variance conference in general.
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, the only one that really sticks out is obviously Clemson. Now, North Carolina lost some serious players to the NFL, so if everyone's going to be on them again, I would just caution that. It feels like, they're still getting the public momentum there. And yeah, Virginia's kind of sitting there, Wake Forest, NC State, Miami's a little bit better than the rest too, but man, great point there. Everybody is bunched up minus Syracuse, and Duke. Yeah, Syracuse and Duke. I think that's my worst teams. Georgia Tech is kind of a little bit above them in my opinion in my power ratings. Good stuff, man. Well, let's kind of blow through the rest of it because, for sake of time, but I got something in the Mountain West. I'm taking Air Force under 6.5 wins, and I did get it at plus 110, and I see it, the same book. I took it at minus 110. I still like it for a smaller play. They only returned 3 starters on offense and 1 on defense. And I know their schedule isn't terrible, but when an option team loses their main running back and their whole offensive line, I'm concerned. Like with option teams, I'm on them the next year when they're bad, then I'm off them. And that's kind of been working out for me. So I'm taking them under 6.5. And as far as a futures concerns, you have San Jose State's loaded, Nevada's loaded, San Diego State is better. This is another one of those conferences that just lots of things can happen.
Yeah, when I look here, my biggest overlay here in this conference is San Diego State. At 6.5 over juice on them. I actually have 7.6 wins for them, which I think is probably a little bit high, which is why I didn't make it a play, even though I've got a pretty big overlay on that one. Just seems like something is off in my number for them. So that's something I'll have to revisit as we go forward here. The other biggest overlay that I have, a couple of them, Fresno State, 6 is their win total. I've got them about 6.7 wins. Then Colorado State with a win total of 5, but under juice, and my number there, 4.41. So I just don't think that Steve Adazio's brand of football is going to translate super well to the Mountain West Conference. So didn't play any of those necessarily, but those are the ones that are, kind of, I guess, in the lean category for me.
Well, make total sense for me. Another conference that's way up in the air for me is the MAC. And I wrote Eastern Michigan lean under 6.5 because my number's closer to 5-ish. I just don't trust the MAC, man. It's all these teams all bunched up except for Bowling Green and Akron. And Kent State has no defense, but they're fantastic on offense from last year anyway. They even put up 40 on Buffalo, but unfortunately they gave up like 70. But anyway, if I was going to take anything, I might find a future on one of those teams bunched up in the middle, like a Western Michigan or something, if I can get a good one. But, I looked at all these season win totals, and it just tells me that they're all kind of bunched between 5.5 to 7.5 ish, right? And that's probably where they should be.
Yeah, as I'm looking here, a lot of the global markets have Central Michigan up to 6.5, and I agree with being there. There's a U.S. book that's got them at 6 still, and I've got Central Michigan down for 6.99 wins. I think Jim McElwain is a pretty big difference maker there. They get Toledo at home. They are on the road at Western Michigan and at Ball State, but they're not big underdogs there for me. And look, coaches kind of make that big year or that big jump in their third season. Well, last year, the third season was COVID for Central Michigan. So this is technically the third season, really, to me, for Jim McElwain there with the Chippewas. So I think, you bring in Jacob Sermon, you bring in a Power 5 transfer at quarterback. Daniel Richardson got some reps last year as well. Khalil Pimpleton's a really good wide receiver. I just think that Central Michigan is a team that has a higher ceiling than pretty much any of the other teams here in this conference, with the exception of Toledo. So I think that Central Michigan's one that I'm pretty much looking at as kind of an overplay. But again, it's important to shop around because there's a massive difference between 6 and 6.5.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, if you're taking a MAC team, you got the nuts to do it. Shop that one around. You'll find numbers all over the board in the MAC. Let's move to the Fun Belt then. Sun Belt.
Sir.
Georgia State is the one I was keen on there. I didn't play it yet, Adam, but I might take their over 5.5 here. I mean, they look good at the end of the season, winning 4 out of their last 5 games, and that loss to Appalachian State was only by 4 points. They have a tough non-conference, but there's a lot of bad teams in the Sun Belt, right? I think they can kind of get through it with around 7 wins. That's where my number's close to, is 7. I think it's like 6.8, something like that. So that's one of them. Troy under 7 might be a play because I see losses versus Liberty, South Carolina, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, Appalachian State, and at Georgia State. I see 6 losses just on Troy, and their season total here is at 7. So 6 and 6 minimum, 5.4 is my number. What is your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have too much here in the Fun Belt, unfortunately. There's one that I'm kind of intrigued by. By the way, my Georgia State number is 5.4 wins for what it's worth. This is one that I actually fell right on the number. It's South Alabama. Season win total is 5 pretty much across the board. My numbers actually came out to 5 expected wins by putting together spreads and then looking at the spread relative to their expected win percentage in that game. South Alabama has upgraded quite significantly on the coaching staff. They bring in Kane Womack, who was the defensive coordinator at Indiana. Obviously, we all know how well Indiana's played over the last couple of seasons, and just the overall feel of that program under Tom Allen. I think Womack can take that down to Mobile here. And their offensive coordinator is Major Applewhite, who comes over from being an analyst with Alabama, was the head coach at Houston. The guy's been a coordinator at several different stops. I don't have this team necessarily power rated all that high, but I've got several toss-up games for them, and I think they're going to be a much better team than what we've seen from them over the last few years. The problem with them is their underdog roles are quite significant. They play against teams like they got to play Appalachian State on the road. They're a big dog. They play Tennessee on the road. I don't think of much of Tennessee, but they are on the road as a dog. They're on the road at Troy as a dog. They're a home dog to Coastal Carolina. I don't see a lot of upset potential for South Alabama, but I do think that even if we don't look at them from a season win total standpoint, I think they might be a pretty good team against the spread as they get the aforementioned Jake Bentley, the transfer from South Carolina and Utah, to be the quarterback.
Yeah, right. I mean, Jake Bentley coming there, he can just prop up the team by himself. They only return 4 starters on offense, it looks like, kind of half of them on defense, but I have them at 5.
Well, let me ask you, Kiev, what do you think about returning starters when you've got a brand new coaching staff?
I still think it's important to have experience on the field. You know what I like about some of these teams in the Sun Belt and the ACC is they played 10 games. There's a lot of conferences that didn't. So I think returning production is important. And if a coach is going to just completely revamp it and start out risking himself at like a 1 or 0 win season, then he's already going to start with a lot of people upset with him. So I think, any coach coming in on a honeymoon year should still at least play some guys there that are willing to play football. They like football. They're going to go out there and they're going to at least do what they did last year. I think he keeps a lot of them there as long as they don't transfer away. And so I do factor that in some, Adam. It's a great question.
Okay. No, I was just curious. It's always something that's kind of a burning question, but people talk about, well, they bring back so much returning production, but yeah, the guys that return had all the production and the team wasn't any good, so that's always kind of a question for me. How much does returning production matter? How much does experience matter? And obviously a lot of teams this season are extremely experienced because guys didn't lose a year of eligibility last year during COVID. They were kind of able to take that red shirt year, so to speak. So there are a lot of very experienced teams in college football. So maybe that is something where inexperienced teams are at a little bit more of a disadvantage. I'm not really sure, but I know that everybody who's in this business has an opinion on it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that right now, Louisiana Monroe returning everybody is not going to make me smile too much unless they got a Jake Bentley. I wouldn't be at 5.5 if it wasn't for that guy. So just a good point on that quarterback. We both like him. So last conference then, and it's the Conference USA, which I actually think is, even with the number of teams they have, possibly the worst conference in football from a top perspective anyway. I guess UAB and Marshall are pretty good, but they're not as good as Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, and App State, man. So not sure what your thoughts on that are, but I'll just tell you right now, I think if I could find a UTSA future, I might take it. I really like Sincere McCormick at running back there. The unfortunate thing is their season win total is pretty high. It's around the 8.5. So I'd rather take the future on them to possibly win the conference if possible. I, of course, haven't taken anything yet, but they do return 19 or 20 starters. And I do have a play in this one, Adam, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we're kind of on the same wavelength here, but the play for me is actually Marshall under. Marshall under 8.5. I'm seeing out there in the U.S. market, seeing a lot of 8s out there as well. If you find an 8.5, obviously that's the way you want to go. I've got Marshall down for 7.72 wins here for this season. Last year they went 7-3, only allowed 13 points per game, but they played one of the absolute worst schedules I've ever seen, and it wasn't necessarily their fault. But this year, they got Appalachian State on the road. They do get UAB at home, but I'm looking at them as an underdog there. Their first game with new head coach Charles Huff, who comes over from Alabama, where I believe he was the running backs coach or run game assistant, something like that. Their first game is Navy, and I don't like Navy, but that's a tough first game out of the chute, especially for a coaching staff that maybe hasn't seen it all that much. Here's the thing. I've got Marshall favored in 9 of their 12 games, but I still only have their win total projection down in the 7.7 range or so. I just don't think much of this team. They've got a lot of toss-up types of games. So Marshall under 8.5, if you find one, is one that I do like.
I'm higher on Marshall than you, but I do agree with everything you said about last year. Their schedule was cake. The thing I like about the Navy first game is they have all August to figure that out. I would rather have them face Navy now than later. And their schedule is still pretty easy. What's their hardest game? Is it at FAU? They get Western Kentucky at home. They avoid.
And they're at Appalachian State. They're a 2-touchdown dog to Appalachian State.
Yeah, and Appalachian State will be pissed because they lost to them last year. But that's one. And I marked that down as a loss for sure. But the rest of this schedule isn't too bad. So I just... Our first disagreement, I guess, I have 8.75, but I didn't take.
Oh, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that is. Okay. That is. That's a big
difference. Is it a? Well, I guess 8.5 is a bad number.
Well, my power.
I was going to ask about a beer bet, but 8.5 is not a good number for you. It's a much better number for me.
Give me 7.5.
Oh, no way! Absolutely not.
Of course, I got to start low.
I'm dumb, but I'm not stupid.
Where's your negotiation? Come on, man.
What, are we supposed to split it down the middle with 8 then? I don't know if I can do that because, like I said, I have them favored in 9 of 12 games. They're not a big favorite in a lot of games to me.
Well, this ain't $100 beer or anything, but
It could be Sam Adams Utopia, the $200 beer on the line.
I'm sure you'd put me up for something like that too, wouldn't you? I don't know. We'll think more about that, but I have them slightly leaned over 8, so it's cool. We got a little disagreement here. I have Marshall slightly above an average team because I really like their cornerbacks. I think their cornerbacks. I'm surprised they didn't get in the NFL last year, but guys like Stephen Gilmore and Nazeez Johnson, they're locking people down. Now it's Conference USA still, but yeah, they looked really good last year. So I guess that was my like on Marshall. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with this team. My play, Adam, to round it off is the UTEP over 3. All right. UTEP over 3. I know this sounds crazy. Who the hell would bet UTEP? But I did some research on this team, and they're not as bad as they used to be. They actually did win 3 games last year, believe it or not. Of course, Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian at Louisiana Monroe. But if you look at their schedule this year, they get to play at New Mexico State, who only returns 2 guys from 2019, 2 starters, right? And so they're my lowest par rated team is New Mexico State. And then I have Bethune-Cookman, right, as the FCS game at home. That should be a win. So you got 2 wins right there, right? But I see a couple potentials here against New Mexico coming up at home. I see Old Dominion at home, and I'm pretty low on Old Dominion. And at North Texas is always a shootout. We'll see what happens with them. And then Rice, very possible. But then you still have Conference USA. You know, FAU is your Louisiana Tech, Southern Miss. I think there's a great shot to get to. I think 3 should be easy. The question is if they get over 3. So I'm going to take them for a star, Adam.
I do want to remind you, we haven't done the AAC, but real quick to talk about UTEP. Yeah, I mean, look, they could. It's ridiculous to say this, but UTEP could be 4-1 in their first 5 games. I mean, they'll be a road favorite at New Mexico State. I've got them favored in that game by 5.5. They'll be favored over Bethune-Cookman. They'll get blown out by Boise State. Then they get a bye week before playing New Mexico. So I do have New Mexico plus 4.5, but I think, or New Mexico minus 4.5, excuse me. But I think that's a game that could certainly go either way. Then I do have them a slight favorite over Old Dominion. So yeah, they could be a 4-1 team, but I also think that 4 is all they'll get if they start 4-1. So that's the worry that I have.
Now we'll see what Rice Baby turns out. But no, you're right. We did blow over the AAC because I wrote down it's Cincinnati or bust for this division. Tulsa is the only one if you want to get cute with the future. Maybe them or Tulane. Tulane was everyone's Cinderella last year, and it didn't go through. But Cincinnati returns everybody, man. And look how good they were last year. Great coach, Ritter over there. I mean, Cincinnati, they look stacked, and they gave Georgia one hell of a bowl game last year, and they choked. That was a choke. They should have won that game. They should have won that bowl game. Probably still a bad taste in the mouth. So unless I got a massive price on Tulsa or Tulane, I wouldn't take a future. But I don't have anything in there, so you must, since you told me I missed it.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anything from a futures standpoint. I mean, I think UCF's can be really good. I've got them down for 9.75 wins. Their win total is 9.5. Love the Gus Malzahn hire. I mean, that's an upgrade for them. I already talked about how I don't like Josh Heupel. I think it's a big upgrade for them. But the team that I'm looking at here, actually my biggest overlay from a season win total standpoint is SMU. SMU's win total out there, 6 in the marketplace. I've got them down for 7.34 wins. So this is a massive overlay for me. 2 throwaway games. They play TCU and they play Cincinnati, where there'll be a double-digit dog in both of those. There'll be a dog at home to UCF. But when I look at this team, one of the things I also factor in when I'm constructing my power ratings is looking at what happens with the coordinators. They hired defensive coordinator Jim Leavitt. I mean, Jim Leavitt is a legend as a defensive coordinator in this business. He's got some talent to work with. They just had a really good season by their standards defensively. We know the offense is always good there with Sonny Dykes. Yeah, some big losses for the Mustangs, I get it, but I think they'll be much, much better defensively. I think Tanner Mordecai will be just fine at quarterback, or if they use Preston Stone, who was a top 15 recruit. The AAC just looks weaker to me in the middle, and I think SMU is the team that can take advantage with a big defensive upgrade under Levitt. So that's actually my biggest overlay from a season win total standpoint here is SMU.
Yeah, great point. I'm bullish on them. I said lean over what I wrote down. I said, of course, they lost Shane Buechele and running back Brandon Stevens, Kylan Granson, their tight end to the NFL. But it's mostly at quarterback where their returning production looks low. They return their full offensive line, couple skill positions. And yeah, that Oklahoma transfer in Mordecai, he was a big name earlier, right? I mean, why not? You saw what Buechele was able to do when he went to this team. I'm going to look into this more, but I might be piggybacking with you on this one, Adam. Before we go, do you have anything in the specialty markets, whether it be like an MVP or conference winner or anything like that?
No, nothing really for me. It's one of those things where I've kind of got everybody stack ranked when I put together the season win total numbers and all of that. And it can be really tough to, find teams that I think have a realistic shot at, winning a conference future because I've got so many numbers in front of me. But, I think you kind of try to prey on the high variance conferences. You try to find the team that you like the most in the MAC. You try to find the team that you like the most in the Mountain West, where I think, Nevada has a really, really good shot, I think, this year if San Jose State does fall back a little bit. We talked about Utah in the Pac-12 as a possible future. It's tough because a lot of these conferences are pretty top-heavy, but you try to find the ones in the high variance conferences, and maybe you wind up getting a good price out of that.
No, absolutely. And make sure lots of books have way different numbers. There's 50 to 1s on MVPs, which are 200 to 1s in some of the Vegas books. You guys got to shop that around before you make any plays. Don't rush it. A lot of these numbers aren't going anywhere. I think you're going to get a good opportunity. Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show, my man. I hear a lot of great things are coming down your future. I'm sure you're going to make some announcements soon. Fantastic job on the podcast. Really appreciate all your efforts, Adam.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's great to talk some college football. It's been so much of a baseball summer for both of us, and it's good to talk some pigskin here, and it's actually pretty timely because I believe August 28th is week 0, correct?
Yeah, that's right. August 28th is week 0, and I believe there's 4 games that weekend. So we're going to get...
And some real gems like that UTEP New Mexico State game.
That's going to be fun. It might
so
be...
It's a big one for you. They have to win that game.
There you go. I made this game interesting, man. And we'll talk a little bit more about that 8 number to see if it's going to be a beer bet. But thanks a lot, Adam, for coming on, man. And if you guys have any questions for Adam, you can always follow him on Skating Tripads. Have a good one, Adam.
Thanks, man.
All right, my friends, this podcast went quite long, so we're just going to give you one quick play here for the UFC on ESPN Hall versus Strickland coming up this Saturday. And I'm looking at the undercard or one of the lower preliminary fights here. We got Ryan Benoit versus Zaruk Adashev, and you probably haven't heard of too many. Maybe you heard of Benoit. Zaruk is pretty new to the scene. Benoit is 10-7. He's 31 years old, 8 KOs, 1 submission, 1 decision. He's never lost by KO, never been knocked out. He's got 2 submissions and 5 decisions, right? A lot of his losses, he lost to Tim Elliott recently, a little bit of a head scratcher. A lot of his losses, he just kind of gets involved on the ground. He's not that great of a ground fighter. He does it. He's just not great of a grappler, right? And that's why you don't see him but with 1 submission. So you're fighting a guy that's really green at 3 in here with Zaruk, right? Zaruk came from the Bellator. He lost his first fight, and then he wins 3, right? And then he gets to UFC. He gets knocked out by Tyson Nam in the first round, and then he loses the decision to Sue Mudarajay. I think I just destroyed his name because he's a no-name. A 3-3 guy that's this green fighting a guy that's 10-7, you're always going to go look towards the 10-7 guy. Now, the cool thing about Zaruk, he has 0 submissions himself, and his stats aren't that good because he doesn't really even take down people. Looking at the stats, Benoit at least has 0.33 takedowns per 15 minutes, and Zaruk's got 0. He doesn't do it that much. And then significant strikes landed per minute, Benoit 2.95 to Zaruk's 1.93. Benoit's a favorite, minus 130, minus 135. So what? That's a little bit too low for me, looking at these two fighters, how green Zaruk is. This is the 125 class. I see Ryan Benoit winning this fight, probably by KO, but I'm going to take the safe minus 130. Everyone, thanks so much for listening to this show. Sorry it took so long. Had some great guests on. All of our conversations went long. It won't be like this anymore, but hopefully you can take all the information that you received for what it's worth. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet us at the OddsBreakers. Everyone, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the fights, and go get some winners.